Number 10. Khalid bin Bargash of Zanzibar. Khalid bin Bargash briefly became the Sultan of a small island nation of Zanzibar in 1896 following the death of his cousin. The British Empire subsequently refused to acknowledge his rule and sent an ultimatum demanding his resignation within 2 days. Khalid refused, and Britain sent 5 ships to retake the island. The resulting Anglo-Zanzibar War was the shortest conflict in human history, lasting just 38 minutes as the British shelled Sultan Khalid's palace. Eventually, the Sultan surrendered and fled to German East Africa, ending both history's shortest conflict as well as Khalid's brief 2 days in power. Number 9. Diosdado Cabello, President of Venezuela. Briefly in 2002, a pro-capitalist coup forced Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez to resign. However, Chavez's supporters struck back and retook the presidential palace. Hugo Chavez had resigned during the uprising, and his vice president Diosdado Cabello had technically become president of Venezuela. In order to bring Chavez back into power, President Cabello appointed Hugo Chavez as his vice president and then resigned the next morning, allowing Chavez to return to his presidency. Cabello's brief one-day tenure as Venezuela's president can only be described as a bizarre game of political musical chairs. Number 8. Tevita Mamodanu. Lezenia Karaci, an ambitious politician, was appointed interim Prime Minister of Fiji in 2000 thanks to a military coup. The trouble was, Lezenia Karaci's interim term was due to expire in 1 year, and running for re-election was out of the question thanks to Fiji's constitution. Or was it? Thanks to a ridiculous plot to exploit a loophole in Fiji's constitution, Karaci convinced the senile president of Fiji to appoint Karaci's close friend Tevita Mamodanu as prime minister. Tevita and Lezenia had agreed beforehand that Tevita would resign as prime minister after 24 hours had passed. Tevita agreed and appointed his friend Lezenia Karaci as the new prime minister, successfully circumventing Fiji's constitution. As a result, Tevita was legally the Prime Minister of Fiji for only 24 hours. Number 7. Roger Lafontaine, Military President of Haiti. In 1991, Haiti's president resigned from power, and the next in line for the Haitian presidency was Chief Justice of Haiti's Supreme Court. The Chief Justice immediately called for democratic elections, but General Roger Lafontaine staged a coup, deposing the Chief Justice and declared himself as Haiti's president. 24 hours later, a counter-coup reinstated the Chief Justice in power, making General Lafontaine's reign as Haiti's president hilariously short. Number 6. Dr. Joseph Goebbels, Chancellor of Germany. As the Russian Red Army closed on a decimated Berlin, one of Adolf Hitler's last decrees appointed Joseph Goebbels as the next leader of Nazi Germany. Hitler, who had been riddled with fear and paranoia, believed that Goebbels, his minister of propaganda, was the only man he could trust to succeed him, despite Dr. Goebbels' negligible leadership experience. Once Hitler committed suicide, Goebbels became German Chancellor. The Russians drew ever closer to Hitler's bunker, and Goebbels decided to follow Hitler's example and committed suicide as well, rather than face capture. Legally speaking, Dr. Goebbels was the leader of Nazi Germany for only 5 hours. Number 5. Boris Yeltsin, Acting Prime Minister of Russia. In 1998, during the midst of a political crisis, Russian President Boris Yeltsin relieved his Prime Minister along with the rest of his presidential cabinet. Yeltsin only worsened his reputation for bizarre political antics when he made himself acting Prime Minister. Eventually, after the move was criticized as blatantly unconstitutional, Yeltsin again resigned and found a new prime minister. Number 4. Skender Ceneshi, President of Albania. In lead up to this brief presidency, Albania was led by Sali Berisha, who ruled Albania for an entire month, even though he had lost the presidential election. Eventually, due to mounting outrage, President Berisha stepped down, and as a result, Albanian House Speaker Skender Ceneshi was next in line and became president of Albania. He remained the president of Albania in technicality until the Albanian parliament found a replacement a few hours later. Number 3. Carlos Manuel Piedra, interim president of Cuba. In 1959, the Batista government that ruled Cuba before Fidel Castro's rise to power was rapidly falling apart. As rebels approached Havana, Cuba's capital, a bizarre chain of political resignations occurred. President Batista resigned, and Vice President Anselmo Allegra resigned a day later. The Constitution of Cuba technically called for the head of Congress to be next in line for president after the vice president, but the head of Congress had already resigned and fled. After the President of Congress, Cuba's constitution called next for the oldest justice of the Supreme Court to become president. The army declared Justice Manuel Piedra as president and escorted him to Havana's presidential palace. He called on the Cuban people to return to order and vowed to lead Cuba during the crisis. However, just a few hours later, Piedra bolted to the American embassy as rebels surrounded his palace, ending his 2-hour-long presidency. Number 2. Siaka Stevens, Prime Minister of Sierra Leone. In 1967, Siaka Stevens was elected president of Sierra Leone by a slim margin. However, the outgoing president of Sierra Leone stubbornly refused to leave office and ordered Sierra Leone's military to terminate Siaka Stevens' presidency. Just minutes after Stevens was sworn in, military officers burst into the room and arrested him. Years later, Stevens would go on to become Sierra Leone's president for more than 20 years. But in 1967, he was president for less than 30 minutes before his arrest. Number 1. Luís Filipe, King of Portugal. In 1908, Crown Prince Felipe was accompanying his father, King Carlos of Portugal, on a royal tour. Revolutionaries attacked the royal entourage and shot both Crown Prince Felipe and his father. The King of Portugal was killed instantly, but Crown Prince Felipe survived the shooting, but died from his multiple gunshot wounds on the way to the hospital. Technically, this chain of events made Crown Prince Felipe succeed his father as King of Portugal for less than 30 minutes in 1908 while being rushed to the hospital, making him the shortest reigning leader in history. If you want to be the longest reigning leader of the world, a prerequisite is that you're subscribed to this channel. And if you want to hear my voice some more, go check out my channel in the description, and we'll see you all next time. No, we won't.